And the one thing you need to know about me is that I spent my entire childhood in a swimming pool. For 10 years, I was a competitive synchronized swimmer. What that meant was my hair was never completely dry, I had a tan year-round, but only in the shape of a swimming suit, and I spent the majority of my life burning far more calories than I could ever eat. You're talking about a sport where you would spend 4 hours a day, 6 days a week training. And during competition season, that number would as much as double. You couldn't be an overweight synchronized swimmer. Now, that was initially a physical thing. I simply worked out too much to be able to gain any weight. But then, without my realizing it, that became a belief. It was unacceptable for me to gain weight. Now, what happens when at 16 I decide to quit synchronized swimming? The unacceptable and the inevitable. I gain weight. It was unacceptable, but I kept all the weight I gained because no diet or exercise could trick my body into being what it was when I was a competitive athlete. So my skin stretched, my jeans shrank, my body pudged and curved. My friends would start coming up to me and commenting on how different I looked. And on the way, I learned to look at the mirror and hate what I saw. I learned how to hate my body. Now, 3 things happen when you hate your body the way I did. The disappointing, the inconvenient, and the self-destructive. The first inconvenient effect of hating your body is one that I would like to apologize to my mother for officially. It's my insistence for years on only buying clothes that were a little too small for me. I'd promise every time to lose weight to fit into them, and I never lost weight to fit into them. The disappointing was the feeling when you're in a situation and you know you have something meaningful to contribute. A good idea, a perfectly timed joke, a witty comment, but you can't say it. So the moment passes, the conversation moves on, the project ends, and you're left sitting there feeling helpless and mediocre and small. Then there's the self-destructive. For me, that came in the shape of the guys I fell for. Over and over again, I would fall for guys who weren't good for me, who weren't kind to me. And the thing is, I knew that that's how they treated me, and I didn't expect them to treat me any different. And the reason is simple. I didn't think myself worth any other kind of love. But why is that? Why would the way I saw my body affect the kind of guys I fell for? It's the same reason I'm not talking to you about statistics on eating disorders. I'm not talking to you about Generation Y growing up with an unachievable aim of what your body should be. It's because my body was never the problem. It wasn't my body that I was learning to hate. When I looked in the mirror and tried to mentally shave off inches from my waist and my hips and my arms, it wasn't because I didn't like their shape. It's because I didn't think that those inches were mine. I'd look in the mirror and I didn't think that that was my body. There's a real me underneath that fat every time I looked in the mirror. My problem wasn't that I was fatter, it was that I was bigger. I now occupied more space than I ever had, and I didn't think that was okay. I didn't think myself worth all the space I now took up. It wasn't my body that I was learning to hate, it was myself. There's the idea of space. There is a half meter of space around you, and that's all you get in this world. Everything we love and everyone we hold dear will not be left for us, and that's a fact of life. Everything will change and die and leave. That's pretty dark, but there's a flip side of that, that you are guaranteed yourself. The space between my fingertips, the top of my head, and the bottom of my feet is a constant in my life. It's the only constant in my life. No matter what happens, you are guaranteed yourself, your body, and that half meter of space. So when I hated my body, when I looked in the mirror and tried to shrink myself, what I was doing was wishing that I occupied less space. What I was doing is wishing that I was less myself. Now, there There are two kinds of people in the world. There are the people that don't own their space and the people that do. The people that don't own their space are everywhere. You see them in class. They're the people who raise their arms like this, like they're not quite sure that they should. They're the people who, when you're talking to them, they end every sentence like it's a question, but it's not a question. They're just that uncertain of everything they have to say. They're the people who keep themselves in toxic relationships, in situations long after they become abusive. And sometimes that's because they don't think they're worth enough on their own. And then there are the people who do own their space, and you recognize them immediately. They're the people who everything they say is an assertion. You know as soon as you see them that they're grounded in their own space. And they constantly seem like they're comfortable wherever they go. And if they're not, they make themselves fit wherever they are. Now, I want to try a little exercise. I'm going to ask you to look at the person next to you. Lock eyes with one person, and that's your partner. I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts that I want you to try and believe about that person. The first is, this person has something to teach me. Now, that shouldn't be too hard to believe. It's practically a cliché at this point. The second thought is, I have something to teach that person. Why is the second one that much harder to believe? At this point, I'd like to call on the wisdom of Dr. Seuss. Today, you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. And yes, it's a... And yes, it's a children's book, but it's worth believing. That wherever you go, you have something to offer the people around you that no one else can because no one else has it. Believing that is what takes you from constantly feeling uncomfortable in your own space, in your own skin, to turning your skin into your home, to making that space your comfort zone wherever you are. So I want to encourage you, no matter what you decide to do with your body, if you're a retired athlete or a CrossFitter or a yogi or a couch potato, I don't care. But I will invite you to make your own space your home. To date, I have gained between 15 and 20 kilograms from the time I quit synchronized swimming. That was once unacceptable. But I know that I am more safe, that I feel more secure, that I am happier in my body today than I ever was 20 kilograms ago. And that didn't happen because I changed my body. It happened because I learned that I have something to offer the people around me. Now, what helped me in that ongoing journey is writing and performing spoken word poetry. So if you'll allow me just 3 more minutes of your time, I'd like to share a poem that I wrote for a friend of mine from 20 kilograms ago. She is 13, standing in a wet swimsuit with pruned hands and dripping hair. In front of a mirror, she decides what curves she wants her body to give her. She says she wants to fix her ribs, go to a doctor who will shrink the space between them. She says it like a prayer. And the deity is the god of the perfect female form of Marilyn Monroe and unrealistic waist-to-hip ratios of the hourglass she's sure is inside her. If only her ribs weren't so wide. Years later, I tell her what it has taken too many too long to learn, that your body is not extra. There is no real you hidden underneath. The inches of bone you do not want are there to hold you up. Your body is not extra. Your bones will ache after every fall, and your muscles won't be strong enough to handle every weight you want to carry, but your hands will listen to you when you want them to be steady when it matters. In front of the first boy you love, on your first job interview, when the boss calls you in and fires you, when your mother tells you she has cancer, when your best friend says she is leaving. Your hips will latch onto fat and refuse to let go, but that will teach you how to love. The space between your ribs is where you will curl up when everything gets too much, and everything will get too much sometimes. The girl with wide ribs, you are not an hourglass. Sand does not trickle through you, it's drizzle, the marker of the soft passage of time, it drops. A bomb leaves everything around it dust and shrapnel. They will stand in the middle of you gasping, but their lungs will always be too small. Do not try to fit them. Do not make yourself smaller. Every man who will hold your waist and wring his hands will do that enough for you. Don't you know that your ribs are this wide to hold the lungs they carry within them? See, you have lungs of a runner. The first time he breaks your heart, they will take you so far you will not find your way back to him. You have lungs of a crier. But don't you know that salt water is cleansing and that the sobs that rumble through you, that shake you, that you feel in your feet are nothing but poison air leaving your mouth? I promise you won't taste him for long. You have lungs of a screamer. When the pain is too much and you let it out, will wake your mother up across continents. She will sit up breathless at 3 a.m., call you worried sick, but you have the lungs of a singer. You will sing her okay over the phone, tell her to doze off safe and soundly, though I'll miss your arms around me. With the same lungs she gave you, she will sing along. She will say a prayer in your name, and she'll remind you of what you have always known, that wide ribs are the best place to build a home.